How you doing? This is Glenn Kuza from Police DTS, and I want to quickly demonstrate on how to create a detailed invoice. Now, different assignments that officers may have worked for a vendor, in a lot of cases, there are obviously potentially different time frames and different minimums. Every department may have different contractual minimums. So you may have a minimum 4, then a minimum 8. So if you work 5 hours, you're getting paid 8. So those all come into effect, and your billing clerk has to sit there, usually calculate this stuff on Excel and by hand, and we try to eliminate that and make it quick and fast. Okay, so very simply, I'm going to log into the system. I am a super admin. I am basically a detail clerk at this point. I'm going up to the vendors area. Invoice tools, I'm going to create an invoice. Okay, what this is going to do is look up every job in the system that has not been billed yet and allow me to select a vendor. All different amount of jobs for these different vendors that have not been billed yet. So I'm going to choose the Asplund Tree Experts, process it. This is where it's calculating all 21 jobs. Okay, it gives me an invoice number, fiscal year by the graduated invoice number, and the invoice date. I could alter and change that. Admin charges, 0. Okay, now let's just say we were supposed to have a 10% admin fee for this private vendor. I can then go back to the vendors. I can look up the vendor, okay, in the list. I can click them. I can go down and I can say admin fee. Yes. I then save this vendor. I go back to the vendors area to create an invoice. Create invoice, it recalculates it all and proceeds to give me the list of vendors that have to be billed. I choose Asplunk again and proceed. You will now see I have a 10% admin fee that's been added. Okay, it looks at each assignment. Number 1, I'm going to want to make sure that they're checked off. The ones that are checked off on the left side of each assignment are the assignments I will be including on this invoice. It calculates it out. Billable duration 9 hours, work duration 8.25. How does the system know this officer only worked 8.25? It's because he signed his electronic detail slip and chose that end time. It then looked and examined it at this point and used the contractual minimums to change his worked hours to billable hours as well. So the system figured all that out and calculated based on your private detail rate. So it does this all in a split second. Now, with each one of these assignments, I can always look at a billing logic to see how it came up with that number. Okay, I can click it, open a window, and it'll break it down into half-hour increments, showing me which each increment is actually worth in the rate that it calculated it at. Okay, I can always override this number. So let's just say we have a specific instance where I am going above and beyond, and I am, it's a charity event. We're not charging for the cruiser, even though this is the type of assignment we would normally charge for cruiser. We could zero that out if we wanted and override it. This is just to calculate it fast. And again, I'll start from the beginning. Very simply, vendors, invoice tools, create invoice. I am then going to see my vendors. I am going to choose the vendor. 21 jobs get calculated. And I scroll to the bottom. I'm basically proofreading it all, and I'm fine. Do I have any notes I want to put on the bottom of the invoice? I automatically have some notes that are going to auto-populate, set in our configuration file for our department, and I just click Create Invoice. This will then take me to the Unpaid Invoices screen, where my newest unpaid invoice is at the top. You can see the balance. There's also a Tools button at the right side of every invoice. But if I want to view the invoice, I click the icon. I can then view this invoice. Okay, I can print it out through the Tools menu, the right-hand side. I can print it. I can view the slips on file, the electronic slips. I can email this invoice as a PDF document to any individual. I can view any applied payments. I can add late fees. I can payroll just a specific invoice. Okay, I can choose a payment. I want to apply a payment. I just received a check. I'm applying a payment of $8,000. Okay, check number 123. Okay, now this was invoice number 24. We can see now we have a balance. We want to look at our view applied payments. Okay, and there's where we had an applied payment of $8,000. So that is where it got applied. We have a balance. We can remove the payment. We can then save and recalculate it. We are back to square one now, $11,317.50 for this vendor. We can then get on, if we went to this vendor, the vendor's area, we can either look up the vendor or go right to their account. Okay, we see their balance. That balance will update when the engine runs. But nevertheless, we can do a full account statement or an unpaid statement, our choice. If we do a full statement, we will get a printout of what this vendor owes for money and if they've had any fees. That could be emailed as a PDF document or printed and mailed to the vendor. One thing I must note is the invoice itself. We'll go back to the unpaid invoices, or if we did a search on the invoice, let's just say we got to the vendor's area here, we search on invoice number 20. It'll bring up everything with a 20 in it. And what we had was, 20 and then 24 was the, we could put the full invoice number to search on or just a part of the number, and it'll bring up everything we find in the invoice searching. But nevertheless, one thing I might note is that when you click on the invoice and you view the PDF document of the invoice, the address is in an area where if you folded this, if you printed it and folded this as a piece of paper, you could actually stick it in a window envelope, saving even more time sending the invoice to the customer. Okay, so in a nutshell, we have 21 details. I need to send an invoice to this customer. I can do it in about 1 minute. Can your payroll clerk or detail clerk create that invoice in 1 minute? I doubt it. PoliceDetails.com.